Welcome to another episode of History Now the Future, a show where we take a sharp look at some of the most pressing issues of today, using history as our guide and the future as our destination. My name is Corey Bradford, and I want to start by talking about the Teflon Don. And no, I'm not talking about John Gotti. I'm also not talking about that album from Rick Ross. I'm talking about the new Teflon Don in Donald J. Trump. The media started calling Trump the Teflon Don because, much like John Gotti before him, every time Trump faced a serious scandal or accusation, he always seemed to come out of it scot-free and clean on the other side. He survived impeachment attempts. He was able to brag about sexually assaulting women and still became president. Even when he got convicted with 34 counts related to fraud in New York, the more serious charges involving him having classified documents at his home in Mar-a-Lago got dropped soon after. And now that nickname has taken on new meaning after the Trump assassination attempt. I mean, the guy might literally be Teflon. The fucking bullet just bounced off his ear and left him with no major injury. But did that even really happen? Testimony from FBI Director Christopher Wray is now casting serious doubt on everything we thought we knew about this assassination attempt. At a congressional hearing on the assassination attempt last week, FBI Director Christopher Wray said, quote, "I think with respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that hit his ear." Now, to be clear, the FBI came out a day later and confirmed that it was in fact a bullet that hit Trump's ear. But they also said they weren't entirely sure if it was a whole bullet or one that already fragmented into smaller pieces. And the FBI only made this admission after political pressure came from both Republicans in Congress and Trump himself after they were outraged by Christopher Wray's initial testimony. So if it comes out that Trump didn't actually get hit by a bullet, but instead only got hit with shrapnel, does that really change anything? I mean, he was still in the line of fire. He still got injured, somewhat. But Trump himself seems to think that the narrative of him actually getting shot is stronger, which is why he attacked FBI Director Christopher Wray for his testimony. And he even declared that he will fire Wray if he gets reelected this fall. But it's crazy to me that Trump takes a cut to the ear and then uses it to frame himself as an American hero who could have only survived such an incident due to divine intervention. While former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in the head during an assassination attempt back in 2011, she sustained a major brain injury and is lucky to even be alive. All of that to have her calls for gun control after that horrible incident completely ignored over the last decade. Further proof that a rich white man in America will always get more credit. And that brings us to all of this DEI talk surrounding the person who will most likely be Trump's new opponent in the upcoming election, Vice President Kamala Harris. Conservative media has spent the last week reducing Harris to a DEI vice president, going so far as to say if elected president, she will be America's first DEI president. Now, if you were unaware, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. According to Wikipedia, sometimes they're accurate, DEI practices are organizational frameworks designed to promote the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly groups who have historically been underrepresented or subject to discrimination on the basis of identity or disability. So basically, it's a sort of new age approach to affirmative action. But conservatives are now sounding the alarm, telling white men that any attempts to diversify workforces or give opportunities to anyone who isn't a white man is somehow taking opportunities away from them, white men. These conservatives see DEI concepts as practices that only promote people because of their race or gender, not because of their actual qualifications. But really, that's a coded way for them to say that whenever they see a black person or a woman with a high position or a very specialized job, they think that there just has to be a white man out there that can do that job better. They're not really concerned with equal treatment and merit-based hiring. They simply believe that white men should always have the upper hand. And the crazy part about it is they already do. When we talk about qualifications, let's say, for example, when it comes to jobs in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. According to research by Wharton economists Jude Kessler and Corinne Lowe, women and minorities studying STEM had to have a 4.0 grade point average to get the same level of enthusiasm from employers as a white man with a 3.75 GPA. In most professional settings, you have to be even more qualified as a minority or a woman just to get noticed for a high-level job. And I really don't think Republicans want to go down this road of Harris isn't qualified because she's not a white guy. Because if we actually take a look at her resume compared to Trump's resume, I think the white guy comes up just a little short. Like, seriously, take ideology and identity away from it and just look at qualifications. Just look at the resumes. Before running for president, Kamala Harris was a law student, then a prosecutor, then the district attorney for San Francisco, then the attorney general for California, then a U.S. senator from California, and then vice president of the United States. By comparison, Trump, before he was president, was a real estate mogul. Then he was a sort of hodgepodge businessman who failed at most things outside of real estate. Then he became some sort of actor who only played himself in bit roles. And then he became a reality TV star who mostly just fired people. And then he became president of the United States. So yeah, on paper, the only thing Trump really has going for himself is his name. We've got a great show for you all today. We're going to talk a little bit about who Vice President Kamala Harris might pick for her vice presidential running mate. We'll also be giving you some lessons in social media. But first things first, it's time for Trending Down. Welcome to Trending Down, a segment where we take a look at some of the more trivial topics trending on the internet in the past week. And today we start with the opening ceremony of the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris, France. As you can see, I got my Olympic gear on from 2022. Now, I personally love the Olympics. It's a special time every 2 years when a strange mixture of pride and nationalism come together in the spirit of competition to determine which nation truly has the best natural-born athletes. Or at least which nation was able to convince the families of the best natural-born athletes to immigrate to it. Or maybe even which nation stole the ancestors of the best. You know what? Let's just move on. Now, France is doing a phenomenal job hosting the Olympics this year. They really put on a spectacular opening ceremony. But since it's 2024 and the internet exists, of course, someone was going to get offended by something. And it seems that some Christian conservatives are up in arms over a tableau segment that included performances from drag queens. Now, the very inclusion of drag queens at the Olympics would be more than enough to outrage every daily viewer of the Daily Wire. But even more controversial was the fact that many believe the drag queens were attempting to recreate Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper painting that depicts Jesus and his 12 apostles. Now, this may be a case of Christian conservatives putting themselves at the center of a controversy that doesn't even really exist, much like that everlasting war on Christmas, a battle that's been raging longer than the TV show MASH was on air at this point, both of which, by the way, are fictional. The artistic director of the ceremony, Thomas Jolly, said he wasn't trying to depict the Last Supper, but instead he was depicting a feast that peaked with the arrival of Dionysus, the Greek god of winemaking, festivals, fertility, and theater. You know, the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, the ones who started the Olympics. But let's just say, for example, he was basing this performance on the Last Supper. Why exactly is that a bad thing? Why would you as a Christian be upset over the depiction of something from your religion? Is it because of the people he chose to depict it with? You know, according to the New Testament, Jesus hung out with prostitutes, poor people, and the downtrodden. His teachings tell us to help so-called sinners, not push them away. So even if you disagree with the lifestyle choices of those in the LGBTQ+ community, wouldn't these folks be the ones most in need of Jesus, according to your own beliefs? I also want to point out that the people most upset about this are the same folks who claim you can't even make a good comedy movie anymore because everyone gets so offended by everything these days. Yeah, you got triggered by a guy in blue paint on top of a table. So you should probably never watch the movie Big Fat Liar. Or the TV show Arrested Development for that matter. Moving on to another Olympic-related trending story that comes from comments made by Gilbert Arenas, a former NBA player who I call the original Ja Morant, because he too ruined his promising basketball career with guns. At least Ja's were actually loaded. Seriously, Gilbert, an unloaded gun is as useless as you were during the second half of your career. Now, the reason I'm being so hard on Gilbert Arenas is because of statements he made about the South Sudan men's national basketball team. This was the first time the struggling nation of South Sudan was able to compete at the Olympic level with basketball, and they shocked the entire world by almost beating the men's USA Olympic team in an exhibition game, only losing by 1 point to a team stocked with the highest rated and highest paid basketball players in the world. Now, Arenas wasn't too happy that America's team, quote, almost lost to some Africans, according to his own words. He claimed that these men in South Sudan don't even have basketball rims in their country, that they shoot on fucking peach baskets in dirt with no shoes. He blamed Joel Embiid, saying that he was throwing the game for his cousins. Embiid actually hails from Cameroon, not South Sudan. He even said that we almost lost to the Cool Runnings team, making a reference to Jamaica's Olympic bobsled team from back in the 1980s that inspired that 1993 film. Again, that was a Jamaican team, not a team from South Sudan or even Africa. Now, I would expect these types of racist, xenophobic, disgusting comments from the average American who knew nothing about Africa. But it is a little surprising to hear them coming from an African American. I mean, look at Team USA. Where exactly do you think the ethnic origins of that team lie? Because newsflash, it's certainly not in Maryland. Gilbert's comments remind us that some Americans, regardless of their race or skin color, see themselves as better than Africans and really anyone else in this world simply because they are Americans. Sadly, Gilbert, the comments you made about these men on the South Sudan basketball team are no different from the way many people here in America see people like you. Racist white folks say the same type of stuff about black people living in the hood right here in the US, and really just about black people in general. Maybe since you have so much money, you think you're one of them. But money doesn't really matter. I mean, LeBron James is basically a billionaire, and they still talk about him like he's a dog. And he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. So how do you think this country really sees your gun-toting ass? Now, Gilbert was probably just joking around, joning, as we used to say back in the hood. But the South Sudan team is no joke. They just beat Puerto Rico in their opening game. And I congratulate them, and I hope to see them continue to succeed in these Olympics. And they actually might have to play America again in these games. And they're going to remember what Gilbert Arenas said about them. Oh, what a game that will be. All right, so this is called Lessons in Social Media, and I've been pretty popular on social media for a few years now. I have more than 1 million followers on TikTok, and I got most of my followers obviously from making funny videos, but also from making accurate videos. And it really upsets me when I see somebody going viral on social media with a video that is either inaccurate, misleading, or just downright false. So I wanted to take a viral video that seemed a little far-fetched and give people some tips on what to look for when a video may be trying to purposely mislead you or may just not be telling you the full truth. So this guy went viral back in like June of this year, early part of the summer. So let's just watch the first few seconds of his viral video and try to figure out what's going on here.
I feel like I'm gonna be sick. I just looked through my Walmart history and I found this Walmart order from 2 years ago for the whole month worth of groceries. 45 items, cost $126. I did notice this reorder all button, and I wanted to see how much it would cost now. Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414. That is 4 times more.
Now look, there are 2 major problems with this video that make me think it's not really telling us the full truth. First things first, this guy has not shown us a date associated with either of these 2 grocery lists. We have no way of actually knowing when he made these orders. The second major issue here is he hasn't actually gone through both of these 2 lists to prove that they're identical. Like right here, this is the end of the second list, right? You can see an item, you can see how many he's buying, you can see the price, right? He didn't show us that for the first list, without giving us at least some small sample size of each list to prove that they're the same items and that the prices are significantly different. We have no way of knowing if these are identical lists. We just have to take his word for it. Also, when you think about it, if you're trying to buy the exact same list from 2 years earlier, there are going to be a lot of changes that occur in that store when it comes to the availability of those items. I used to work in a grocery store for like 2 years, and we used to change things up all the time. So if they no longer carry the item or the item is just out of stock, usually these apps will replace the item in your order list with another similar item that's almost always going to be slightly more expensive. So that could be going on here, but honestly, I don't even think that's what's happening. I cannot just take for face value that these are identical lists with no proof that they are. And he's also given us no date associated with either list. So honestly, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm gonna give this video like a 3. I just don't think he's telling us the full truth here at all. So I don't really know what's going on here. I'm not gonna say this guy is a straight up liar, but without any proof of the dates on those lists or the identical nature of those lists, I just cannot believe at face value with no real proof that those were the same list. I don't think this guy's telling us the full truth. Everyone is trying to go viral these days. People think they can make money off of this, that they can get famous off of this. I'm not saying that that's what this guy is doing, but never take anything on social media at face value. Question everything, and if it seems too far-fetched, it probably is. So it looks like Kamala Harris will be the new presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. Obviously, this is not set in stone, but considering that ballot deadlines for some states will occur before the Democratic National Convention even takes place, it would be in that party's best interest to settle on a nominee as soon as possible. So with Harris in place, it's time to take a look at whom she might choose to be her vice presidential nominee. The main goal when choosing a VP is choosing someone who balances the ticket. Harris needs to go with someone who is both geographically and demographically different from her in order to appeal to the widest group of Americans possible. Now let's take a look at 3 of the most likely VP picks as well as their pros and cons, and I'm also going to propose a 4th choice that could unite the entire country, but one that won't happen because Democrats aren't nearly clever enough or selfless enough to make it a reality. First up on the VP shortlist is Gretchen Whitmer, current governor of Michigan. Now, Whitmer is a very popular governor in a battleground state that Democrats absolutely have to win if they even want a shot at the White House this election. Whitmer won her 2022 re-election campaign for governor in Michigan by 10 points, basically a blowout. So the biggest pro with Whitmer is she can help win Michigan, which might be difficult for Democrats, given the large Arab American population there that rebelled against Biden because of his handling of the Israel-Palestine conflict and the horrible violence we are now seeing in Gaza. Whitmer is progressive, but not extremely progressive. She is known for her willingness to work with the other side, and personally, I think she would make for a better presidential nominee over Kamala Harris. However, the only con with Whitmer deals with the inherent sexism both she and Harris will inevitably face. An all-woman ticket could be a hard sell when it comes to male voters, but it could also help galvanize women voters even more, especially in the face of Roe v. Wade being overturned 2 years ago, so this pick could really go either way. Next up, we have Pete Buttigieg, our current Secretary of Transportation. Now, Pete B made a strong run for the Democratic nomination back in 2020. He was actually one of my favorites during that campaign cycle, and the biggest pro with him is he has been one of the most visible and outspoken figures in the Biden administration. Pete has never shied away from going on platforms like Fox News to speak directly to the audience of the opposition. And again, much like Whitmer, I think he would make for a stronger lead candidate than Kamala Harris. But also like Whitmer, the biggest con with Pete B deals with America's propensity for bigotry. Pete B is an openly gay man, married to another man, and the far right will point to him and claim that this is everything they've been warning their constituents about. They'll scream about his lack of moral fiber, even though their nominee sleeps with porn stars, actively breaks the law, and encouraged people to storm the U.S. Capitol building and defecate on Nancy Pelosi's laptop, or something like that. Either way, Pete B will have a hard time overcoming middle America's love affair with hating the way some people love. Our third choice for Harris's VP would be Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. Now, Kelly is easily the safest choice here. He's a former astronaut, a Navy captain who flew combat missions during the Gulf War. He's married to former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who suffered a major brain injury when she was shot back in 2011 during an assassination attempt. Kelly has been a center-left moderate in the Senate on most issues, but he's actually been very vocal on the need for better border control, a major issue that many Democrats refuse to acknowledge. On top of all that, he's from Arizona, another major battleground state that Democrats desperately need but are in danger of losing. When it comes to demographics, being a white man from a slightly different part of the country, he balances the ticket quite well with Harris without overshadowing her. I can't really think of any real cons with Kelly, except for the fact that he's not the most well-known of these choices, but that could actually be a good thing. It makes him seem fresh and newer to the scene. Now, some have asserted that Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania and even California Governor Gavin Newsom are possible VP contenders, but honestly, I don't see it. Both of them have some skeletons in the closet that appear to be peeking out in the recent days, and I think one of these other three picks I mentioned are far more likely to be chosen by Kamala Harris. But I will mention one more choice that I would put forward if I had any say-so with the Democrats in all of this, and that's Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. Now, most of you will say, wait, Romney? The guy who ran against Obama back in 2012? Oh, cheesecake? He's a Republican, a conservative. But he's also a moderate Republican, someone who claims that today's Republican Party does not resemble the party he was once the presidential nominee for. He's even stated recently that he believes most Republicans don't even seem to truly believe in the Constitution anymore during the Trump era. A Harris-Romney ticket could be seen as the ultimate unity ticket in a time where America seems to be more divided than ever before. You could score big with the never-Trumpers and all of the right-leaning moderates and independents that don't want to support the extremism that now defines the GOP. But of course, this would never happen. Party loyalty will always supersede what's actually good for the nation, and we're a long ways off from seeing the collapse of this broken two-party system that currently holds our government hostage. Either way, Kelly seems to be the safest choice here, but perhaps Kamala Harris chooses to do something more revolutionary. Only time will really tell. I want to thank you all for watching this week's Monday edition of History Now the Future. I also want to give a special thanks to the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library and Museum on the campus of Mississippi State University. I got the opportunity to visit there this past week. I filmed a little bit. I also spoke with their executive director, Ann Marshall, so I will be showing you all that interview and some of my trip there next week on our next episode. But coming up on our Thursday interview episode this week, I sat down and talked with employee rights attorney Ryan Steigar, also known as Attorney Ryan on social media, and we had a long-ranging discussion on employee rights, unions, and the current state of labor in America. Make sure to check that out this Thursday, and also make sure to like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of History Now the Future. I'm Corey Bradford. We'll see you all next time.